Hello, everybody. Good to be with you today. It is Sunday afternoon in Virginia, and Andrash and I, as Papa Pan and Mama Tink, wanted to share our thoughts of the moment, our heart moments, what we're feeling, thinking, and experiencing with you today. And we're going to start doing these regularly. So we look forward to sharing more together. But today, this is just where we are in this moment. And Andrash is going to start us off with a breath and a poem.
Oh, well, I didn't expect to start with a breath, but
It came through. So.
we can't do without the breath. The breath we're not only the heart, but just life is a breath. And that's been a story uh, for the last number of years about when are we going to be able to breathe again? That word, I can't breathe, has become so so popularized is not the right word, but it's so much word of that it means so much to so many people. I can't breathe because so many people's voices have been choked. And of course, right now, with what's going on in Ukraine, is something that is gripping the entire world. Unless you're not part of it, not in it, it's hard to imagine not being part of it.
It's hard to imagine not feeling it in one way or another, not experiencing something about it.
Yeah, so that's what we're going to focus on. This moment is so. We are right at this line of choosing what is going to happen with humanity, with all of humanity. So I'm going to start with the serenity prayer that most of you, a lot of people know about because of the Alcoholics Anonymous adopted it to use in their beginning. And it goes, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And of course, that's where the key lies, the wisdom to know the difference. The wisdom to know the difference translates down, and we talked about that, so I'm bringing that up, is basically discernment. To be able to discern any moment, any situation for what it is you have to know the truth. And of course, the obvious
What is truth?
Well, the obvious conversation about truth is, what is the truth about what's going on, what's right now in connection with
truth in the news comes to mind.
Yeah, and right now the connection to what's going on in Ukraine and what the truth is, because the information war. Some people actually label it we're in the middle of words of war, or war of words. And words of war are being used. It's something about war that I cannot but say it right now is war, WAR, man's worst act of reason. Just let that sink in a second. Man's worst act of reason. And of course, all reasonable men have agreed to disagree about so many things. But isn't that what the opposite of what we need is? We need to find what we can agree upon, not continually just disagree. And we can't seem to agree on the basic truth. So thinking about this prayer, this serenity prayer, grant me the difference, that grant me the wisdom to know the difference, and be able to discern it, to be able to discern the truth, is extremely challenging for most people. So why is that? It's because the truth is elusive even within each of us.
Because we're rarely even true to our own selves. It's a journey and a practice to be able to be honest with yourself
Yeah.
in your own mind and heart.
The world, God bless.
Excuse me. Thank you.
God grant you the blessing of
of clearing that for us all.
Okay, so that we're sitting under the sneeze tree.
Mm-hmm.
It's blooming. Our own tree on our wall is blooming. Okay, so the lightness of being is necessary. I'm not laughing at anything else except the truth of the fact that we are all beings are sensitive to so many things, and life right now is challenges all of life, and so the truth of the moment is as truth is the truth as close as we can get to knowing what is truly within our own hearts. And this is where the challenge has started. It started so long ago that nobody really knows. It just goes. I mean, it's hard to pinpoint it. But the point is that the moment we start lying to ourselves in any which way, that's when we begin to diverge away from the truth. So it's important to actually ponder upon what is the true I, the true me, and the true to you, the true we. And it's very important to see everything collectively now.
I'm going to excuse myself for a second. I'll be right back. Sorry, folks. I'll be right back. My sneeze has to be dealt with.
Well, okay, so I will continue on this thread because the truth, there is only one truth, and that is the truth of our identity, of who we are as human beings. And that truth is where we can get attacked from the moment we're born. It can happen, it starts with how the world around us reflects back to us as to how we are seen from outside sources. And of course, the outside sources at first our parents and our immediate family. And so how we're seen by the outside world is the first beginning of development of one's self-identity. And this self-identity is the way we look at ourselves begins to form at a very early age, probably instantly, maybe even before we're born to some way. Of course, as more we become aware of life, uh, the more this vision of ourselves and our world expands, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to take that big view of the fact that this moment, with what's going on in Ukraine and many other places in different ways, is something that is just brings so many things up to the surface for everyone, because our existence is threatened.
It's bringing humanity together. It feels like governments have a pretense of coming together, but it's bringing us together in our hearts and our compassion, for one another. And we get these waves of compassion whenever there's a natural disaster, and then our lives just carry on. But these waves of compassion that we have right now can bond us in a new way and really help us move in a new direction.
Yes, in a new direction to help us to have the courage to change the direction of where we are, where we're looking.
Right, change what we can.
I'm still kind of, I started bringing it back to the beginning in terms of beginning to see the relationship between how we see ourselves and our self-identity, and how collectively we identify as humanity. And that last part about collectively how we identify right now with being Russian or Ukrainian or American or EU, the European Union, or any other classification, all those things that we join up with, has just developed into this identity that forces us to take sides because of what we identify with. So you see where I'm getting? I'm getting to the fact that our identity, our self individually, our identity is what actually develops our way of seeing not only ourselves, but the whole.
Yeah,
how we
worldview.
see
It's our worldview.
it develops our own worldview from oneself. And so that's how it just goes back and forth between identifying oneself and identifying the group that you're with or that you choose to identify with. In this particular case, in the big picture, the countries, US of A, Russia, Ukraine, and the other NATO countries, or all these identities that constantly pop up. But let me propose this idea to you that it all begins with the fact that we have not identified with the most important part of who we really are. Because the truth is, the one truth is that we are all In fact, all life is part of the divine. Life, the life force in everything is
Divinity.
is the divinity, is what,
Yeah.
we ended up using different words for it, like God. Vincent van Gogh said, life, art, beauty, love, all those things are the same. All the same thing. This is the beauty of Vincent van Gogh that I connected with. And that's where it all comes in. God, love, beauty, of course, art, and it's all the same. So this is the part that we cannot forget. This is the important evolution of what we end up calling ourselves as artists. Those who don't know, most of you who will listen to this know that we've been calling ourselves heartists in resonance, because it's all about resonance. It's all about good vibrations. Life is vibration. Life at the very base level is a vibration. Without vibration, there's no life. It's
The frequency at which that vibration happens that determines your experience.
Yeah.
So it's about entraining, which is matching frequency with the highest potential, and really grasping onto that and being able to hold it in your body. It's an energy, a frequency that you can set, and you can put it on a rheostat and keep it growing.
Well, but this is the key. You set it with an intention.
Yes.
So we have to have an intention, not commandments or any other forcible issue, but it's a choice. It's maintaining our own sovereignty and the freedom, our own individual freedom to choose. And it comes down to, very simply, right now, it comes down to the choice of life or death. And this is what's
up in the world
what's
right
coming
now.
up in the world. Good and evil, life and death.
Duality at the extreme.
And all the other divisions that have been superficially imposed on our psyche and then fully accepted as reality for each of ourselves, makes 7.5 billion different stories. And until we learn to look for what is the common denominator between the 7.5 billion people, plus the I don't know how many billion other forms of life of all kind, so that we can harmonically live in peace.
And harmonically emerge and grow naturally. We have to return to the garden and the idea of how we grow up from the earth. Each individual plant, each individual soul grows up from the earth, and let's grow naturally. Let's create a space in the world, in our hearts first, and then in the world for the future generations to grow naturally, to discover and explore and live freely.
But before we can do any of that, we must look within to truly see how you see oneself, how one sees oneself. Who am I? And then the next question, why am I here on this particular moment in time on this incredible earth? And of course, the final question is, how can I contribute?
My greatness, my gifts.
How can I contribute
To the all.
when you discover what it is that you have to contribute
Yeah.
and who you are and what you have to contribute? How can you actually implement it, contribute it? And of course, people do. That's what people do. People always do the best they can with whatever they're equipped with. Unfortunately, that doesn't guarantee anything because people's best sometimes to other people it seems like pretty bad. And what comes out of it? It's man's worst act of reason.
Yeah.
This war and any other war that is just not really going to go anywhere.
Yeah, its age is over. Its time is done.
It's done. We are in the precipice of truly shifting all of life's existence into oblivion with the threat of this poor, disturbed human being called Putin, who chose to partner
really well.
who was chosen by our misbegotten, fearless leader of lies, the chump. And who knows what they were talking about in those secret meetings that nobody else. It's now becoming obvious what they talked about because they both have the same idea in mind. They want to rule the world. They want to join those totalitarian leaders like the North Korea, like China, like other leaders who are totalitarian. And from the past, of course, there was Stalin, Mussolini, Hitler, and Ivan the Terrible, and and you know, if that's what you want to look at, that's what you're going to see. That's what you're going to focus on. That's what you're going to be. So it's time to focus. It's time to see where, how can we focus? How can we all
turn our attention to the garden again? I always go back to that, to the idea of a garden. Okay, we see those weeds and those invasive species that need to be taken out of the garden so we can have healthy food and plants and flowers. And, if we look at humanity like a garden, that's also happening in humanity. We're not the ones choosing, but we're the ones experiencing being the plants. Are we being removed, or are we seeding the next generation with our thoughts? And those dark, horrible things of war have to compost. But before they become a compost, they can stink really bad. They can be thorny. They can be they can hurt if it's the same idea. What's happening in humanity is what happens on the land with nature, in a garden.
Yeah. So I don't know if we want to go too much longer with our first segment, and we kind of broaden up the idea, but I'd like to just bring it back to the focus of the first step. You cannot skip the first step. Is and all the wise men ever, and all our poets, and most notably Shakespeare said, and above all, to thine own self be true. So that's the point. To be true to yourself is you have to really get into your heart space of caring and compassion, and look to that and know that that is what we all have in common. That is the heart of humanity and the heart of life. Is begins after your eyes, your inner eyes, are fully opened to see the real you.
Those are the eyes to see and the ears to hear. Hear your own inner voice, because that inner voice is the source of all life, that we all come from the same source. And listen to that. Let that voice speak through you and come to know who you are, what your gifts are, and how to bring them to the world. And together we will make the world a better place.
Well, this might be as long as anybody wants to take time with us, but this leaves room for the next step after we do. But just wishing you the courage, wishing all of us the courage to change the things that we can, and
Wisdom
accept
to know
the
what we
things, accept the things that we can change. But in reality, we do have the ability to change, not outside of ourselves, but inside, which is really what's all that counts.
And there's the saying in Lakesh, the changes in me are the changes in you, because we're all one. So any change you make in your own self, coming closer to your heart, will also affect all of humanity. It'll change your piece of the whole, which changes the whole picture. And it's a constant fluid. That's the only thing we can be really sure of. Change. Change. Life grows. Life completely, constantly regenerates. So let's regenerate this thing here called Mama Earth and humanity, and rise into our greatness and beauty easily and lovingly. And if you want to know more about our work and who we are, our nonprofit website, Peace Production, at peaceproduction.org, and our entrainment program for community leaders can be found at heartistry.world. And those are in the notes. And I look forward to another
And
conversation from the heart.
Discover the relationship between the heart, mind, and the soul, and our oneness, because it's better together.
Definitely. I put a post. We have a group on Facebook called The Love Hut, LUVHUT. And I put a post in there. I do like calls out for a specific thought or action. And it seemed to be time for another group hug. So I put out a call for a group hug from the heart. Let's just all connect in our hearts and think about hugging the whole world.
But there again, you can't hug anybody until you learn to be a huggable being within yourself. So, adieu for now. namaste. And the true word for namaste is the God in me sees the God in you. The divine in me sees the divine in you. And we see the divine in all life. So here's to life.
Here's to life. Yeah. The rat in the middle.
Oh, okay. And